Thanks everyone for joining in. This is the IoT webinar here from Couchbase. So today we are going to present pretty much how companies like Verizon have used the Couchbase engagement database platform for their IoT projects. So today this initiative was basically organized by the regional director of Central Europe, Wolfgang Fresser, and today James Forensky will be presenting. Is one of our senior solutions engineers based in Oslo, and then I'm also responsible for small and medium companies here at Couchbase. It will be your main point of reference here at Couchbase for questions if you got any questions, but anyway we can direct you to the right people if needed. I will really keep it brief. It's just a very brief presentation now about what Couchbase is, and at the same time we're going to basically talk about what is there in the IoT landscape at the moment and why companies in different industries have been using the Couchbase database for different challenges and requirements. We're going to also present what Couchbase as an engagement database platform, as we define it, is able to offer from web, IoT, and mobile applications. And yes, we're going to have also a focus on Verizon and what Verizon has done. Of course, we're going to leave also a space for questions. And at the same time, you can feel free to ask us questions in the chat box. And as mentioned earlier, should we not be able to answer to all your questions during the webinar, then we are going to make sure that we are going to follow up after that. There is also going to be a very brief survey, probably 30 seconds at the end of this webinar. So if you can also fill it out, that would be very much appreciated and will help us delivering even better webinars in the future. As a brief introduction, of course, you understand how important it is today to make sure that the customers are going to have a great experience that is personalized, feature-rich, also quick and performant, and how important it is for customers to be able to use applications anywhere and anytime, also offline if possible. And Couchbase allows that. On the other side, it's important to know that we are in a type of specific era here where interactions became one of the most important things when you use an application, and this is what leads at the end of the day to more transactions. Customer experience is key, and it's key also to understand where actually Couchbase as an engagement database basically can be placed in this type of scenarios. Usually companies that use Couchbase don't just use Couchbase as main database, but very often use that together with relational databases, also transactional databases, if you want to define them this way, and also with analytical tools. We got way of connecting and make these technologies work together, and that's where you can have the full type of picture. We support other use cases that are anyway very important. We are not going to discuss all of them in this moment, but we are definitely going to make sure that if you got any question on that, we're going to address the answers to those questions. So regarding Couchbase as a company, it's important to know that we are talking about a 100% open source product. We've got basically more than 500 customers, and you are present worldwide, also with our partner environment. So now we'll hand this over to James Forensky to discuss this, and yes, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. My name is James Forensky, as Andrea said, and I'm a senior solutions engineer for Couchbase. I've been with the company about 1.5 years. My previous life was actually, my previous development life was to be an Android engineer, or basically an Android software developer, full stack developer, back end, front end, Angular, Spring on the back end, and MySQL, and way back it was an embedded engineer as well. And can you see my screen? I'm trying to.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Is that Andrea's screen or my screen?
That's a good question.
Let me check. I will give you present. Okay, you should be able now to present your screen. Let's see if you work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So top 5. Okay, good. Sorry about the glitch there, folks. So we here at Couchbase, we kind of categorize Couchbase in terms of IoT or Internet of Things use cases into 5 key categories. One being on-device data management, data transport between device and backend. That's a very key component in terms of business logic and the REST call and the business logic and the actual querying or the access of the data. Management of streaming data. So this is a very interesting use case. Or a part of the architecture that has to do with analytics. So using, for instance, Kafka or Apache Storm into Spark Hadoop to do analytics, for instance, click-through analytics, what's in someone's, for instance, someone's doing online shopping with the application, the mobile application. And then data sharing between devices is also a very important aspect because everyone, when you're in a, let's say in a gaming situation, if you have a mobile game, you want to see your friends' top scores. You don't want to see everyone's top scores. You just want to see your friends' top scores. And how does Couchbase enable that? And also offline enabled apps and devices, which is another key component that we purposefully targeted as a key feature for the enable with database or enable a data platform. So what are the technical requirements for a IoT app? Well, of course, you can see at the top, there's, not only there's your mobile applications, but there's smartwatches, applications for transportation, applications for user 365-degree customer views, automobiles, on airplanes actually. We have use cases, for instance, Couchbase Mobile actually being in the air, and also on mobile devices, again, in a back-end sense for the dashboard. So all this gets aggregated through or gets transported through the internet to web services, and then that gets stored into Couchbase, where again, we're demonstrating again that we have plugins for Apache Storm, for Kafka, for Scoop connectors for Hadoop that you can do analytics and then push, for instance, products back to the user at the end device. So Couchbase, what is Couchbase? Is a data platform. So if you were to look at this chart and see our symbol in the middle and work yourself out from there, you'll see that we have our core functionality is memory first, persistence, and elastic scalability, and that's our core database engine that is based on the bottom right chartreuse or whatever, not chartreuse, turquoise section called key value. So everything's based on key value. Even our document, we do the key feature about Couchbase that sort of delineates us is the fact that we do key value and document access. So you can do key value and also do document based on your use case. So it's a very feature that sometimes you use both at the same time for different types of data access. So along with that, we offer Nickel, which is our SQL-like query language, and that's the purple section, and that requires indexing and indexing in a query engine as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we also offer replication, so we can actually replicate to other clusters, either active-active or active-passive. It's a very hands-off operation. There's not much administration really besides setting it up, setting up the targets. And actually with the Enterprise Edition, you can do filtered replication. So you don't have to replicate the entire database. You can replicate just almost to the document type. You can actually do it however you want to set that up. So along with that, we have full text search. So full text search, you would think that as Elasticsearch for Couchbase in a way. We do have an Elasticsearch plugin, but what we want to provide an engagement database, so we want to have the functionality like a full text search to be included into included in the database. You don't have to get out of the database. You don't have to do this going back and forth or routing to an Elasticsearch cluster. You can stay right and do simple searches, for instance, right within Couchbase. So for atypical, the top 10, the top uses for Elasticsearch we can do in 5.0 in our full text search. And along with that, in developer preview in our 5.0 version that just came out, we have an analytics. And think of it the same thing as full text search. You're having in database analytics. You don't have to go out to Spark. You don't have to go out to Hadoop. Those common type analytics to do dashboard generation, for instance, or doing click-through analysis, they can all be done in database, which is very important, very fast, very highly available. That's where we get the scalability as well. So obviously there's another section, the orange section, which is the mobile and IoT use case. And around the edges, we have a unified programming model, which means that we have several different languages that we support, from C all the way to Golang. We have everything in between. We have Java's probably our most popular, and then we have Node.js, and we have Ruby, and we have C, and we have several different flavors of our SDK. And full stack security. That means that from end to end, we have security in terms of SSL connections between the client and the server. We also provide, you can do on-device encryption as well. And we also, for the DevOps, we offer containers, for instance, with Kubernetes and Vagrant and Docker, and cloud on all the different cloud public most used public deployments, cloud deployments such as AWS or Azure. We definitely have a presence there. You can either bring your own licenses, or you can use you can buy actually buy licenses through those services, or you can do it on by hour basis. It's up to what you're operationally what you need. And then the big data and SQL integrations is that ETL to storage of records. Maybe it could be a relational database to be the storage of record, or network drive, or basically into Hadoop or something like that. So this is just another abstraction, another level of showing our features, another in working from, obviously of the unified programming interface, and that's basically all the languages I talked about before, and all the plugins, for instance, Storm and Kafka, but also we are based on JSON. So if you start from left and go right, JSON is, we are JSON.org compliant JSON. That's how it's all of our data is structured that way. So what we created when we went to JSON, basically we said, well, okay, now we're going to create a SQL-like query language called Nickel. It is 80% SQL compliant. It has, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in the next slide, I believe, but it's a fully functional SQL-like query language that is very SQL-like, to the point where if you know SQL, you could probably be doing Nickel in the same day. You could be doing Nickel queries the same day. It's that much like query, that much like SQL, sorry. And along with that, now the querying is going to require indexes. And so the interesting thing about our indexes is that they're global. And what we mean by global is that it expands the entire cluster. So you're getting a snapshot that goes all across all of the nodes. And so we are collecting indexes of the entire data set, we're not just collecting data on each one of the nodes and then doing during a query, actually collecting keys from all the different nodes individually. We are doing that all the time. It actually is connected, the indexer has a service called a projector that's connected straight to our DCP, our data change protocol. So any changes, either a mutation or adding of a document, the DCP is going to send a notification to the projector, to the index, saying that this specific key value field for the secondary index has been updated, and then the index is updated accordingly. And obviously I talked about XDCR and a replication, the mobile and IT being on mobile, the search analytics. And then we have the unified administration. It's very easy to use, either through REST calls or through our UI to do administration. And I'll talk about how we do that. And then basically we're calling that, in this entire ecosystem, a database, an engagement database, or engagement data platform. So Couchbase for IoT. So it's an interesting, for us, we were early, I guess you could say we're early prophet of IoT, because we've had Couchbase Lite for probably a few years now. and it's an like I said, it's on-device database that is very hands-off. So as I was a mobile developer, I was always struggling with how to save data on a phone. You know, creating a local data store, even if it's files, let's say it's not easy, but it's a lot of work. And you know, calling a REST call, getting the JSON object, populating an SQL-like database, or maybe making files and keeping track of changes, all these things is just a lot of coding. And what we've done is we've taken that out of the developers' hands and we've done that work for you, or we've done work for developers. And how that works with Couchbase Server to create the offline capability is the synchronization or sync gateway. So think of, for all those back-end developers, if you have all those layers of authentication and role access and what queries to run, what data is accessible, and then pushing that into a REST call that gets pushed, that actually then the JSON objects are pushed back to are requested from a data application, we are handling that in one synchronization function called the sync function, which actually is in JavaScript, right in Sync Gateway. The interesting thing that we do that's totally unique is that we do it on the write side aggregation. We're not doing read side aggregation. So when a mobile application wants data, Sync Gateway has channels and role-based users and roles, so that you can create private channels that are just to that particular user. You can create semi-private channels where, let's say you have a group of friends and then have a mobile application, you can replicate just that data for, let's say, for instance, top 10 scores, and then having public or game-wide or device-wide information being replicated. So in terms of the data synchronization that occurs, that green portion, that is basically push-pull replication. We do actually offer as well synchronization, or I'm sorry, change listeners on the mobile side. So Couchbase Server, like I said, it's always there. It's highly scalable, highly valuable, and security on top of that. So we have role-based access, as I mentioned before, with channels and users and roles, and then secure transport with TLS, and then we have 256-bit AES full database encryption on the device as well through one of our partners. So our architecture, how do we work? How do we scale so well? And it basically, this is a Couchbase Server node in a collective sense. So we have 4 different components. We have data service, indexing, a query, and cluster manager. So data service is our key value store. It's written in C. It's highly performant. Our MapReduce views actually run on data service. It's what we call our bread and butter, or our basis for everything. So we are always improving key value. So I'll actually have a slide later on that goes into the improvements we've done in key value to make it more performant. But along with that, I mentioned before, global secondary indexes, builds and maintains those global secondary indexes, and that's on a cluster-wide basis. And then the query engine, which is going to create query plans, coordinates and executes queries against either global or distributed indexes. Think of distributed indexes are the indexes that MapReduce views use. And we have several different flavors of indexes as well to fit the use case. And then we have the cluster manager. So the key differentiation between Couchbase, pardon me, one of the key differentiations is that we are masterless. We don't have a master slave architecture. We have a cluster manager, which is a quorum-based election, and any one of the nodes can serve as the cluster manager. And what they're going to take care of is the configuration, the heartbeat, the statistics, then RESTful management interface. And it's like I said, it's a quorum-based election. So that's a very fast election. So the administration don't have to have backups of masters or redundant masters. We just don't have that. So we can go into details of how the I won't go into too many of the architectural details about how I actually do that and how clients are aware, but if you want more information, we definitely can set up a go-to meeting and talk about it for sure. So like I said before, we have key value stores, the root of everything, and then JSON documents sit on top of that, and then the access methods is views, global indexing, and nickel and query, but we also do key value key value data access as well. So everything is layered on top of key value. A document stores a special case of key value. Views provide aggregation and real-time analytics. And I mentioned before, global secondary indexes provide low latency, high throughput indexes because it is global. It sees the entire cluster database or data set. And then we have a nickel that provides a very expressive way of accessing data. And it's very popular. It's even getting more popular. We're adding more functionality to it. So nickel, just talk a little bit about nickel. Nickel's like I said before, a SQL-like query language, expressive, familiar, and feature-rich. It's ANSI 92 SQL compliant, so it has selects, inserts, updates, group by, sorts, functions. Those typical functions you see in SQL, we do them. So it's very easy to pick up and learn. And nickel extends a SQL to handle data that is nested. And what nested means is, let's say you have a nested JSON array within a JSON object, or let's say you have multiple JSON arrays nested within multiple JSON objects within a document. Then you'll be able to actually, through nickel, go into those specific arrays and pull out those arrays as a flat array instead of having them all nested as they come out. And then it's distributed, it's partitioned across all the clusters. So multidimensional scaling, how do we scale so well? How do big enterprises like LinkedIn, for instance, Pokemon Go, be able to handle all the traffic? Well, we can actually then, with the enterprise version, we can actually dedicate services to specific nodes. So a specific node can be data service, and a specific node can be index and a query service. And what that provides is a way of balancing out the access method in a data service. So for instance, let's say your data set grows. Well, you'll see another green node come up, and that's node number 9. And node number 9 is just a new node that's added in. And what's going to happen is when that node gets added in, we're going to do what's called a rebalance operation. What the rebalance operation will do, it'll take the data from 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then take a portion of that and put it onto 9. And we handle that internally. The way we manage that from a client to server point of view is that we have what's called a cluster map, and we could talk about that further if you're interested in that and interested in how that works. It's a very interesting feature that we have a hash map that actually maps out all the data to all the nodes. And then we have index and query. So for instance, with the data service, you have more, since we're memory centric or memory first, to expand your data set, you have another machine with more memory. But with index and query service, they're more core intensive. So that's where the vertical bars come in, where you can basically scale upwards, or just add more cores, add more to bring, if you have more querying, more clients coming into querying. Let's go next slide. And then now we're going to talk about the Verizon story. So these slides we did a collaboration with Verizon. We did a shared webinar back in March, so we just kind of borrowed those slides from Verizon because they're a large customer of ours that uses Couchbase. They have 2 key things. One being the things. I keep saying ThinkSpace, but ThinkSpace platform and real-time data pipeline. So what they see, Verizon sees is the IoT is transforming businesses through aware and autonomous network through actionable insight and better business intelligence. So we have aware, the asset must be able to send something. Autonomous, the asset must send data somewhere automatically, and the action is what to do with that data once it's onto the server. So the market adoption, Verizon sees 10 billion documents in 2014. They're seeing triple that in 2020. So in 6 years, seeing 3 times the size of data. And then basically those industries that will be most interested in that is manufacturing, utilities, transportation, and then retail, healthcare, and consumer. We're already seeing that in for instance, Ryanair uses our Couchbase Mobile, GE uses Couchbase Mobile, United Airlines uses Couchbase Mobile. They're already adopting that, and those are other industries that are adopting that. Next slide. So here's what ThinkSpace looks like. So we have end-to-end device integration and management. We have devices. We have the Verizon network. So if those are not familiar with Verizon, Verizon provides wireless, wired, home internet, TV, home telephone, landline telephone. They offer security, home security. They are by far becoming in North America, being particularly, I guess, in the U.S., the predominant home IoT provider. So we're talking about wired access through their fiber optic network or traditional IoT cores, and then through the wireless. So that goes into the ThingSpace platform, which is connectivity management, device management, analytics, security, and compliance. So the collection, the platform, which does the aggregation of data to applications that are Verizon specific, or for users, or for projecting out to other private social media or internet. So real-time data and intelligent data pipeline. We have the data coming from sensors, cloud, or device, ingesting through streaming data into ThingSpace, which is analytics, rules, relationships, filtering, transformation, which goes into the insights, and those are dashboards, maps. Those type of insights would be how viewable that data is after analytics and aggregation. So we have you have artificial intelligence devices, maps, and visualization. Obviously, like I said, with dashboards would be a typical use case for that. So basic streaming data flow. So think of streaming data, the source being Couchbase on one side, going through Kafka, input stream, perhaps through Kafka into Spark, Spark streaming batches into Spark Engine through Spark jobs. The batch processing as raw event or aggregate events go into the database, and they go into the views such as dashboards. And that's just the basic data flow for Verizon. So why did they select Couchbase? They selected Couchbase for real-time analytics, for time to market. These are the factors or the reasons why. This is their SLAs. They needed to have a very high SLA on active data replication, real-time notification alert, time to market, and support the volume, variety, and velocity. And then here's how the features that Couchbase has to support that. So what they have in ThingSpace, plus Couchbase with big data aggregation, horizontal scalability, powerful monitoring, all these features, XDCR, produces not a problem, it's a solved problem from Verizon's point of view. So solving device report challenges. So they had a complex and dynamic IoT device report. They had multi-tenancy issues and grouping of the IoT devices. Multi-tenancy meaning that they had data that one user shouldn't see some portions of data versus seeing their own portion of data, and that's where Sync Gateway comes in. That's where the synchronization server, where on the right side they're creating roles and users and roles and channels to aggregate the data correctly, and that's where that multi-tenancy problem can be solved. And then arbitrary search and sort on more than 35 different device fields. That being from set-top boxes that provide cable with HDMI to your TV, to having the optical to electrical translation portion, to the home, to the routers, for instance. It's a very rich, a wide set of devices, and scaling to support devices, several thousand enterprise customers. And ultimately, it's about reducing time to market, and it's ultimately about being always on active data centers, and I guess that's 5 nines availability. And their challenges were exponential growth of IoT, the device report from a portal has unpredictable response time, and the query from relational database was just not meeting their requirements. So it's difficult to maintain legacy stored procedures, very large SQL. Those who had to work with relational databases, how those how long those query scripts can be, and how long join queries can take, and that ultimately results in RDBSs having a high replication latency. And so the time to market and the capacity projection, as seen in the graph, just doesn't meet what they need. And that's where Couchbase came in. So this is basically the data grid. This is their other portion where they have 2 data centers. It's distributed. So the qualities that Couchbase provided were distributed memory first modular data-centric system built on top of Couchbase and Elasticsearch, and near real-time or real-time data analytics and depending on query. So from here, you can see that ES clients and ES data is, so we have Elasticsearch data, Elasticsearch clients. We have an application that's doing searching through there, but the CRUD jobs are going through Couchbase. The replication, so the interesting portion is the number one plugin for Couchbase is Elasticsearch plugin. So you see that red replication going to Elasticsearch. The interesting thing is that we see Elasticsearch as just another cluster to replicate to. So the amount of scheduling of data migration, don't have to worry about that. It's just next DCR target to us. So it's basically, here's your Elasticsearch cluster, replicate to it, and it's that easy. And then we have XDCR to do data center to data center replication as well. Next slide. So here's another interesting IoT use case is BD. It's a healthcare company in the United States. It tracks health activity in real time to monitor diabetes. And the way they do that is doctors get real-time health information because they have devices, they have blood sugar monitoring devices that actually have Bluetooth embedded in them that actually talk to an application that was created on Couchbase mobile on the actual mobile phone. And that actually radically changes the patient-doctor relationship because the doctor can see a dashboard of all of those of the blood sugar levels for his particular diabetic patient. So it just precedes, or it can actually prevent, furthering, providing better care is the ultimate goal. And with Predix, so Predix is a platform that GE has developed for doing connectivity. Was a mission critical thing for Predix, and it was what Predix needed Couchbase Mobile for was to be offline capability. Obviously, when you hear General Electric, you kind of hear of just washing machines and dryers, but they actually make locomotives and wind turbines or wind farms and electrical grids and even nuclear plants. So they're in many different industries, and they need to have a field maintenance application that would work offline, because a lot of these infrastructure, like for instance wind farms, there's no connectivity to them. So they needed to know for a particular maintenance task, that they have the spare parts, what are the spare parts numbers, those type of, and where they completed. The field technician can be offline capability, have that capability of doing the tasks, getting to perhaps a hotel or to a 4G network, and then pushing that data, replicating that data to the server saying those tasks were completed. So Predix or GE tried a year to do this. So they did about a year's worth of development, and after contacting us through a conference, and then the next week going to do a meeting, they ultimately had, through Couchbase Mobile, using their existing mobile application, within 90 days having something in field technicians' hands in production. And that's the power of how much, and that's just a testament to how much we take so much of that coding off the developers' hands, allow them to do features, and we take that upon ourselves and we put it into the product and put it into our data platform. So we just came out with 5.0, and it's got some great features. So for the agility, we have full text search is now in cloud and on the edge, so it means it's in for production. We have new APIs in query that's much improved querying. Adaptive indexes allows more strategic ad hoc querying. Nickel visualization and monitoring tools. So now you can see nickel queries you can see the performance per query. So you can actually then look at a visual query plan and come up with a better index. And then multi-center data center report support. What that means is that you could have two data centers and you can create a region. So a client will be aware that there are two clusters within a particular region. So let's say there's an unfortunate tornado that wipes out Oklahoma, and there's a data center, the Oklahoma data center is wiped out. Well, there's a data center in Texas. The client will be aware that there's a data center actually in Texas. And external data and federated queries using curl. That's a new feature that provides curling, to use curl to do queries as well. So performance, we have what's called inferal buckets or in-memory data buckets. What that really means is diskless buckets. So everything's in 100% in memory. It means faster failover, it's faster boot up time, it's faster rebalancing. We've improved key value to faster query access. We've put, for nickel improvements, we've done complex predicate pushdown and inject projection. That sounds like a it sounds like a tongue twister, but basically what that means is that you're going to take where clauses and certain aggregates and push them down into the index, and that actually be more performance. So you don't have to have the query engine doing all these where clause and the aggregates that will happen post fetching the data. It happens in the index. And then updating the SDK for enhanced performance. And for manageability, we have role-based access for users application at the bucket level. We have faster failover going from 30 seconds to about 5 seconds, or probably around 7 seconds. Index replication, so you don't have to worry about having replication, creating those indexes yourself or replicated indexes. We manage that. We have cloud container deployment enhancements. So we've just we're locked in step with Kubernetes. So the stateful Kubernetes is coming soon, and we have a relationship with OpenShift and Kubernetes so that we are actually providing a developer preview of a plugin that does stateful Kubernetes. So we're very much into containers and very much into the cloud and very much about providing DevOps and Ops and admins the best functionality possible. And redesigned our web console. We have CBU import export for CSV and JSON objects, and then mobile server interoperability is the capability that mobile clients or sync gateway clients can interface with native clients, and they can work on the same cluster or the same set of servers. So it's definitely been a massive improvement. And it's all about performance in the end. That's what we're all about at Couchbase. So we have the key values and the improvements. So we had a 2x improvement in querying from 4.5 to 5, and a 1.5 key value performance improvements. And so we did a benchmark. So YCSB did a benchmark for simple query and simple CRUD and scan operations, and Couchbase defined the newer set of operations with richer JSON data structure, so joining, filtering, pagination, searching, array scans, aggregations. So the performance comparison, for instance, against the latest Mongo, we have 125% faster pagination queries, 50% better performance on search queries, and 10% better performance on mixed workloads. And you can find that report. It's an independent report that created this. They created these statistics. So that's it. I'm all done. Thank you very much. I believe we can answer. There can be a capability asking questions. I'm not sure. Andrea, do you know?
Yes, it would be great if we can answer to some questions. So there are a couple of questions that already came in. So there is one, for example, that is coming from Jaffa and is from a performance perspective, which is preferred? So an 8-core CPU clocked at 4 gigahertz or a 16-core CPU clocked at 2 gigahertz?
Honestly, do we? That's a sort of an interesting case of we don't really see. I mean, in terms of, I would think number of cores is probably going to win out in the end versus overclocking a core processor. I think that there'd be more distributed. It'd be more distributed tasking in that case. And we take so for instance, with our Plasma engine or indexer, one of the key features with our new indexer and new indexer in our new Plasma indexer in our 5.0, we actually can find out how many cores are available and actually then utilize them. So we're not overtaxing, or we're not creating threads that the CPU can't handle. So we're not just sort of saying we have a bunch of tasks, let's just start throwing threads out as much as possible, and we actually have an awareness of how many cores are available, and we'll create threads accordingly. So maybe that answers the question.
All right, so there is another one, actually, another question that is coming from Mauricio, and this question is it possible to migrate the MongoDB database structure and data to Couchbase? And is it possible to recycle the REST API based on Express.js to Couchbase REST service?
Is it on the chat? I gotta see.
Yes, it's actually in the question section.
Okay, I'm going to try and look at that. So in terms of migrate, okay, I see it now. Okay, is it possible? Yeah. So I guess the easiest way to do it is you saw that in one of the last slides I had CB import. What CB import's going to do is it's going to import based on CSV or JSON. So what you can do is sometimes customers do actually export Mongo into, they use their export tools to put it into CSV or they're into JSON, and then we can ingest it that way. And that's a starting point. It's, you know, obviously that's a starting point for the data modeling. You know, it depends on, for instance, how you've structured, if you're doing querying in Mongo and how that affects the data modeling for querying with our SQL language, but that's something that we can help you with. And I pretty sure I would have to really, this terms of doing an API REST for REST API for Express.js. You know, we do have a Node.js client, and we do have what's called a scene stack. So it's Couchbase, Express, Angular, and Node. So it's definitely out there to do that. And I mean, is it a one for one? As far as the back end work, I would have to evaluate that based on taking a look at it, but it's definitely possible for sure.
All right. See, there are also another couple of questions.
Yeah, I see one is, so from Hatham, is there a sandbox for download to get the first insights of Couch and get in touch with the tool? I mean, we can. So there's, you know, we can run it through container. We're actually in Docker, so you can actually just get it from Docker and then spin it up from Docker. We do have instances in Docker that you can, so you don't actually have to then do download. You can just fire them up in Vagrant. I believe with Vagrant as well, we have instances in Vagrant that you can just fire up to make it easy to start playing with it right away instead of having to find a machine and download it or put it on a VM and then install it. You can do it through that, if that helps. And then Gustavo, at performance level, how do you evaluate the difference between Couchbase and a graph interface such as, so I don't know if we have too many benchmarks on Neo4j in a graph database. Obviously, graph database is it's a specialized, it's a very specialized database doing a specialized task. So I'm sure that it's very performant at doing graphs. But saying that, with our analytics engine that's in developer preview, we will have, a time series graph type aggregate functionality that would be built into it. So you could try playing with or try testing out our analytics, and then actually we love feedback. And if there's something you'd like to see, you can just send us an email and tell us it's something feature we would like to see, because right now it's in developer previews. Here's your chance of actually putting in your putting your 2 cents in to find, seeing if you're making a, like a top 40 request for a song, you're making a request for what you want to see in our analytics engine. I think that's all the questions. Oh, yeah, I got that one. Yeah,
I think in the meantime, while we wait for other questions to arrive, just wanted to check whether you can also answer this question. So, what are the most recurrent challenges that you've seen in the IoT landscape, and why do you think that Couchbase could be a solution against relational databases or other solutions in the NoSQL area?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges is offline capability is definitely a huge challenge that and being that I was a mobile developer, I know the pain. I know of trying to create creating a mobile data store that sits on the phone, because of that orchestration, not only of just doing the REST call to translation into, let's say, an SQLite database, but actually finding out where the changes are and where the conflicts. What the interesting thing is that with Couchbase Mobile and that replication process is that we actually handle the default way of handling conflict resolution is through last rights wins. So whoever last rights wins, that stays. Saying that, though, you can configure the local client to actually, you can actually evaluate the conflict. So you could actually then locally on the device say, okay, I have 2 different versions, which one is actually the relevant one for this particular case. So that's on a use case or use case by use case basis. The other thing is that we have a feature right now is peer-to-peer capability. Is something that we see a lot in the IoT because of the lack of connectivity. But let's say that, you know, Predix, for instance, and let's say that, you know, there's 2 technicians working on the same, you know, working on either side of the, you know, wind turbine, and they're not close to each other, and they want to talk to each other. And how does that occur? So with Couchbase Mobile, we do actually have a peer-to-peer technology. These 2 devices can replicate to each other. It can't talk to each other. When you have more than 2 devices, it turns into a ring topology type of use case. So it's definitely in production with the customer right now, and it's actually in the air. It's actually used on airplanes. The peer-to-peer technology is used on passenger airplanes for passenger to crew interaction. So the use case is that, let's say a business class or higher customers on a request a soda, that they will order it on a tablet. That tablet that will get pushed to the purser. That purser, it actually gets pushed to all of the, through ring topology, is pushed to all the different, all of the crew. And someone who takes notice and says, okay, I will serve this, you know, I'll serve this customer, I'll serve this passenger. When they hit that they have serving this passenger, that notification goes and gets propagated peer-to-peer to all the other tablets saying that that order was satisfied. The other neat feature of this is actually, let's say, for instance, someone's on a flight and their entertainment system doesn't work. So they can put in a comment card saying, you know, my entertainment service didn't work. It was intermittent. The sound was terrible. The jack in the seat was, you know, the stereo jack in the seat was cracking, and I really had a bad experience. They fill out a comment card in the application that gets pushed to the customer, or I'm sorry, the purser. That gets saved. When that plane comes up to the gate, when they get to the crew lounge, it automatically gets replicated back to home office. Before the customer's leaving the airport, they have a customer service representative calling the customers, apologizing for the disturbance or the lack of satisfaction, and they can offer a upgrade before the customer even leaves the airport. And this is where engagement comes in. This is where engaging the customer as fast as possible comes into play. So I think those are 2 big challenges. Offline and peer-to-peer are definitely 2 big challenges.
All right, so let's wait another few seconds to see if there are any other questions. Right, seems not to. Let's give it another few seconds.
Yeah, like I said, if anybody has an interest, we definitely can do a webinar to talk about the architecture of how we work internally, how our indexing works, how our querying works, how easy it is to start development with Couchbase. We can guide you through that. Just contact Andrea or Wolfgang or myself, and we'll definitely can set something up and get back to you and give you an even further in-depth discussion on it.
Yes, and of course, maybe I can also just point out one thing which is could be relevant. I mean, of course, you're free to download for free, as I was mentioning, the Enterprise Edition. You can test that for free. So of course, there are many features that you're gonna find and they're gonna be also more and more relevant considering the new data protection law. So what we're gonna do is yeah, I mean, you're going to find all this information on our website, but what is important to know is that we are basically, as a company, offering the possibility also to access to the database. So our experts, on one side, there are, of course, people like James that work together with our customers in different projects. But also, there are also training classes. And that's also one of the best ways to basically jump into the technology without any risk, but at the same time also to get the most out of the platform. So there are 3 main tracks. You're going to find all the information on our website. There is the system administration track. There are all certifying classes for the system administration for 4 days. Then there is a development one for 3 days, and you're going to learn everything about data modeling and yeah, how to basically run queries using Nickel. And that's pretty much everything. Of course, if you're going to have any question, you can also send me an email, andrea@couchbase.com, or you can also, yeah, just feel free to write to us. And yes, that's pretty much everything. Of course, if you got, have you got any other question at the moment?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's everything. So, okay, guys, then if you don't have any other question, then I would suggest at this point to, yeah, I mean, if you can, of course, complete the survey, we don't need to stay the full hour if there are if there aren't any additional questions. So, yeah, if you could complete the survey, that would be very much appreciated. And yeah, of course, we are going to let you know in case there are going to be other initiatives like that, if that's okay with you. All right, guys. So thank you very much for attending to everyone. And yeah, I will speak with you next time then.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.